Joining us right now, all the way from well, let's face it, California. We got the California Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, with us. Good morning. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you for having me. There's a lot going on.
Boy, is there, right? Lots going on around the world. Lots going on here in California. In fact, I understand, did you already fill out your census form?
We sure did. Our family did it online pretty early on in the process. And so we're part of the nearly 65% of households in California that have responded. That's a good start, but with more than 1 in 3 California households not responding to the census yet, we clearly have a lot of work to do. And time is running out. As I'm sure you've heard, the Trump administration is ending the Census Bureau's outreach activity a month early and moving the deadline up from the end of October to the end of September to finish collecting data. So there's no time to waste. Heaven forbid they cut another month off of that time frame. So anybody who hasn't responded to the census yet, please do so right away. You can do it online. You can do that old paper form. You can even do it by phone this year.
Well, and I'm glad you're mentioning that. Look, Alex, you and I met a while back over at the Latino Education Advocacy Days back at Cal State University, San Bernardino. I'm not sure if you remember that, but what I want to ask you is, I remember you speaking specifically on this situation of why it's so important, especially maybe not just every other community, but especially the Latino community to take part in letting their voice be heard and let people know, hey, it's a pretty big population here in the state.
Exactly. Well, look, let's remind ourselves why the census is fundamentally so important, right? It's required in the U.S. Constitution because it's our national population count that determines both the distribution of political power across the country as well as the distribution of federal funds across the country. It's these population statistics that determine how many representatives California will have in Congress for the next 10 years. And it determines the level of funding, not just that comes to the state of California as a whole, but literally every community in the state for education, for healthcare, for infrastructure, et cetera. I'll give you a real pointed example. Once we find a vaccine for COVID-19, how many vaccines will they send to your community and to your city and to your county? Well, that's going to be distributed on a per capita basis. And so if there's an undercount, we get less of the representation we deserve. We get less of the federal funding we deserve, and potentially less of the vaccines once it's available. So clear examples of why participating in the census is important. But we know from prior census that there's some communities that are harder to count. There's more of a reluctance to fill out that census survey form. Communities of color, lower income communities, younger people, immigrant families, for a variety of reasons. And so we're working extra hard to make sure that they are counted, because when it comes to the census, everybody's counted, not just citizens, not just voters, and not just adults. 10 years ago, the largest undercounted population in California was children under 5. So when you fill out the census, remember, count everybody in your household, including children, and even any friends or extended family that may be living with you at this time.
Well, I'm glad you're mentioning that, especially with the kids, because I know there was like a program called Healthy Families, and that's really a certain amount of money allocated for younger children that usually to parents where they don't have any other means. But all of it starts with knowing how many are actually here. Can I give you a really, you can feel free not to answer this question, but do we know offhand on average if we're significantly lower than we think we are, or we kind of have a good handle on that?
So far, as I mentioned, just less than 65% of California households have responded to the census. That's actually about a percentage point ahead of the national average. So we're not doing horrible, but it is still a far cry from where we were 10 years ago. So statewide, we have a lot of work to do. Every county is different. Some counties are doing better than others. And even in a county like Los Angeles, you have some communities that are responding at higher rates than others. So we got to just keep our foot on the gas until the very last day, because I fear that this administration might cut the deadline short yet again in an attempt to, leave a lot of people out. There's forces in Washington that would love nothing more than to reduce California's political voice in Congress and to reduce the amount of funds that come to California for all the vital resources that we need. So we've got to keep spreading the word. And again, this year, for the first time, there's multiple ways you can participate in the census. You can fill out that paper survey if that's your comfort level. You can do it online, just like the Padilla family did, or you can even do it by phone. You can find all those entry points of information at my2020census.gov.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up. I don't know if you were watching the news. There's so much to keep up with. But yesterday, I saw President Trump say, he loves mail-in ballots when it comes to the Republican state, Florida, because they've done it so well. And I thought, that's a little kind of biased because you're saying the other ones don't. But I kind of get it because voter fraud and whatnot. But back to you guys at the Census Bureau. Very interestingly enough, again, you're still sending people to people's locations, at least as long as you can. What are the typical protocols if somebody knocks on my door?
Different parts of the country and even different parts of California are in different situations when it comes to the spread of COVID-19. So even the official Census Bureau field workers, the enumerators as they're technically known, have to abide by whatever public health and safety protocols are mandated, by state and county officials. So given the distancing requirements that are in place, there may be knocks on the door, but it's going to be, maybe not right at the doorstep, but removed from the door where they may communicate to you. Look, a lot of people are concerned, whether it's because of COVID exposure or anything else, to open the door to a federal government representative right now. Mm-hmm. So the best way to avoid the need for somebody coming to knock on your door is to get the census done in advance. So again, you can do it online. You can do it by phone. If you receive the paper form, you send it back right away and eliminate the need for somebody to come to your door if you're not comfortable with that. But the field activity was delayed for obvious reasons, COVID-19 and stay-at-home orders. So they just recently reinstated that, and now that outreach is getting cut short because of the White House's directive. And so we feel it's a big risk with the potential devastating consequence for a state like California. Look, we have the most at stake. We have the largest population and the most diverse population. And so if there's an undercount, we're going to be hurt by it the most. So there's not just a sense of importance we're trying to communicate, but a sense of urgency we're trying to convey as well.
Alex, I'm so glad you joined us. Thank you. If you guys are just joining us, we're talking to the California Secretary of State, Alex Padilla. Alex, I know you got a big, heavy weight on your shoulders doing what you're doing over there, but thank you for spending your morning with us, getting this information out.
Thank you. Please continue to stay safe.